The queen watched me while I treated her daughter's wounds, saying, "You must marry." The storm had begun hours before Elira arrived at the castle. Rain pelted the cobblestone roads, turning them into streams that reflected the flickering torches of the walls. The air was thick with the scent of wet stone and smoke from the burning braziers that lined the outer courtyard. Elira pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, her boots slipping slightly on the slick stones, and took a deep breath. She had been summoned, though no letter had explained why. Only a messenger had arrived in the middle of the night, bowing low and saying the princess was in danger. The castle loomed above her, massive and dark, its spires disappearing into the clouds. Lightning split the sky, illuminating banners that bore the royal crest, a silver falcon soaring over a crimson field. Elira's heart beat faster. She was a healer, not a hero. She had no place in a castle of kings and queens, yet fate had a way of drawing those who were needed most. The gates creaked open, and she stepped inside, the warmth of torches and the smell of herbs enveloping her. Servants hurried past, their faces pale and anxious. A hush fell over the hall as she moved forward, and Elira realized she was being watched, not by the servants but by something else, something regal, sharp, and unyielding. She was led up a long flight of stairs, the sound of her boots echoing through empty corridors. Finally, she arrived at a chamber where the walls were lined with heavy tapestries depicting battles and royal feasts. The air was thick with the scent of ointments and herbs, and on a large bed lay a young woman, pale and trembling, her hair matted with blood. "Princess Lyanna," the voice said, and Elira turned to see her. Queen Seraphine stood in the corner, her posture perfect, her eyes dark as night. She was beautiful, but there was something in her gaze that made Elira's skin prickle. The queen did not approach, did not speak further, simply watched. Every movement Elira made was under her scrutiny. Elira knelt beside the princess, her hands steady despite the fear twisting in her stomach. Lyanna's breathing was shallow, and her eyes fluttered open and closed. "Do not be afraid," Elira said softly, her voice calm. "I am here to help you." Lyanna's lips parted in a weak smile, though no words came. Her hands twitched as if she wanted to reach for something or someone but could not. Elira began her work, carefully examining the wounds along Lyanna's arms and legs. Deep cuts, probably from brambles in the forest, and bruises that spoke of a fall or a struggle. She had seen injuries like these before, but never on a princess. The queen did not move. She only watched. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to look not at the wounds but through Elira herself, as if seeing her past, her fears, and her secrets. "You must marry," the queen said suddenly, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Elira froze, her hands stilling over the princess's leg. "Only then can you protect what you love." Elira's heart skipped. She had expected many things when she was summoned, but not this. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she had already judged Elira and found her wanting, or perhaps worthy. Elira returned her attention to Lyanna, trying to ignore the weight of the queen's gaze. She applied salves and bandages, her hands moving with practiced precision, but her mind was a whirlwind. Why had the queen mentioned marriage? Was it meant for Lyanna or for her? The thought made her stomach twist. Hours passed. The storm outside raged on, and the candle flames flickered with every gust of wind. Elira worked silently, and slowly, Lyanna's breathing grew steadier. She began to stir, opening her eyes fully now, and Elira saw the faintest glimmer of life returning to her face. "Your Highness," Elira said gently, "you are safe now, you will heal." Lyanna's eyes, a clear shade of violet that seemed almost otherworldly, met hers. There was gratitude, yes, but also something deeper, curiosity, trust, and perhaps even a spark of longing. Elira felt her chest tighten. She had never felt such a connection with a patient before. The queen's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and commanding. "Do not think your work is done." She stepped closer, her robe whispering across the stone floor. "There are other dangers, and you will face them. If you are to be of use to this castle, to this family, you must understand what is at stake." Elira nodded, though she was unsure what the queen meant. She had devoted her life to healing, but never to politics or royal games. Yet the queen's presence was impossible to ignore. There was power in her gaze, and a strange, almost dangerous beauty that made Elira's heart beat faster. As the night deepened, Elira sat by Lyanna's side, keeping watch. She had learned to listen not just to wounds, but to the silence between words, the tremors in the air, and tonight the silence was heavy with secrets. "Why am I here?" Lyanna whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why do you stay?" "Because I must," Elira said softly. "And because I want to." Lyanna's hand twitched toward hers and Elira took it gently. The princess's fingers were cold, but her grip was determined. In that simple touch, Elira felt a promise forming, a bond forged in fear, pain, and hope. Outside, the storm began to abate, leaving only a gentle drizzle. The castle felt different now, quieter, yet more alive. Shadows danced along the walls, and the queen's figure remained in the corner, watching, waiting. Then, just as Elira began to feel a moment of relief, Lyanna's eyes widened in sudden fear. Her body stiffened, and a sharp intake of breath escaped her lips. "What is it?" Elira asked, alarmed, leaning closer. Lyanna's gaze flicked to the door. He's coming," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, but there was certainty in it, as if she knew something Elira could not yet see. The queen's eyes followed Lyanna's, dark and unreadable. "He will come," she said softly, almost to herself. "And then the choice will be yours." Elira felt a chill run down her spine. She did not know who he was or what choice she would be forced to make, but she knew this night was only the beginning. The calm she had hoped for was gone, replaced by the weight of destiny, the pull of secrets, and a storm far greater than the one outside the castle. For hours, Elira kept watch, her hands never leaving the princess's side. She whispered words of comfort, touched the fevered skin, and felt a connection that went beyond duty. Lyanna's life depended on her skill, but her heart seemed to depend on something even more fragile, the trust that had been given, unspoken, in a single touch. When the first hints of dawn crept through the tall windows, Elira finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world wet and shining, glimmering with the first rays of light. Yet within the castle, shadows lingered. The queen had not left, nor had she spoken further. She simply stood, her presence as commanding as ever, her gaze a reminder that the path ahead was uncertain. Elira looked at Lyanna, asleep but resting more peacefully, and felt a surge of determination. She would protect this girl, this princess, with everything she had. She did not yet understand the queen's command, nor the shadowed fate that awaited them all, but she would face it. And in the quiet moments before the castle awoke, Elira felt the first stirring of something dangerous and beautiful, a bond that could not be broken, a connection that might define not only their lives, but the fate of the kingdom itself. The queen's words echoed in her mind. "You must marry, only then can you protect what you love." Elira did not yet know what they meant, but she would soon. Because in the shadows of the castle and in the heart of a wounded princess, a story was beginning, one of courage, longing, and the kind of magic that only comes from love tested in fire. And she would not falter. The storm had passed outside. But inside, it was only just beginning. The morning after the storm, the castle seemed quieter than usual. Sunlight struggled to pierce the gray clouds, casting long shadows through the tall windows. Elira had stayed the night beside Princess Lyanna, her eyes heavy but alert. The princess slept peacefully now, though her skin was still pale and her breathing shallow at times. Every few minutes, Elira checked her pulse, adjusted the bandages, and whispered words of reassurance. Queen Seraphine entered the chamber just as Elira was finishing her morning preparations. The queen's robes brushed the floor, silken and dark, the silver embroidery catching the light like shards of ice. Her expression was unreadable, her gaze sharp and cold. Elira straightened instinctively, feeling the weight of the queen's eyes as she worked. "You slept here," the queen observed. Her voice was calm, but there was a tension underneath it, like steel hidden in velvet. "You care for her more than you should." "I care for her life, Your Highness," Elira replied respectfully, keeping her hands busy folding clean linens. "Nothing more." Seraphine's lips curved slightly, a ghost of a smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you care for what you cannot name yet." She stepped closer, inspecting the princess with a scrutinizing gaze. "Lyanna is delicate now, but she will recover. I need to know if you are capable of more than simple care." Elira's heart skipped. She had anticipated tests, perhaps political judgments or cautious words, but the queen's tone suggested something else entirely, something deliberate, almost dangerous. "You will begin at once," Seraphine said, turning toward the door. "There are tasks beyond this chamber, challenges that will test your skill and your resolve. Attend to them, and we shall see if you are fit for what comes next." Elira nodded, unsure of what to expect. She had healed wounds before, faced illnesses, and even worked through accidents that would have broken a lesser healer. but something about the queen's words suggested that these challenges would not be ordinary. The first task led Elira into the library, a vast hall filled with towering shelves, ancient tomes, and scrolls that whispered secrets as she walked past. The air was thick with dust and magic, a place where even the slightest misstep could draw attention. The queen's voice echoed behind her. "Find the texts regarding the forest curse," Seraphine instructed. "You will need them to save the princess." Elira's eyes widened. She had heard whispers of the forest curse before, a magic older than the kingdom, tied to spirits and ancient pacts. To face it required more than skill. It required courage, knowledge, and an unwavering heart. She ran her fingers over the spines of the books, searching for the clues hidden in ink faded by centuries. Hours passed in the quiet of the library. Sunlight fell through the high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny stars. Elira's hands trembled slightly as she translated the ancient runes on a brittle scroll. She learned that the curse was not only physical but spiritual. It could twist the heart, summon shadows, and reveal hidden truths that mortals were unprepared to face. When she finally looked up, she realized the queen had been watching her. Seraphine had moved silently, as if she had appeared from the walls themselves. "Knowledge alone will not save her," the queen said. "Courage and understanding are equally necessary. You will face more than injuries, Elira. You will face choices that can wound the soul." Elira swallowed, feeling the weight of the queen's words. This was more than healing. It was a test of her very being. She thought of Lyanna, lying fragile in the chamber above, and felt determination bloom like fire in her chest. She would succeed no matter the cost. Later that day, Elira was summoned to the garden. The castle gardens were vast and wild, a mixture of cultivated flowers and untamed wilderness. The scent of wet earth and blossoms hung thick in the air. Lyanna sat on a marble bench, wrapped in a soft shawl. Her violet eyes were clearer now, though the faintest shadow of pain lingered beneath them. "Elira," Lyanna whispered, her voice soft but firm, "do you have to leave the room to complete these tasks?" Elira knelt beside her, holding the princess's hand gently. "I must. But I will return, I promise." Lyanna's hand trembled slightly as she clutched Elira's. "I am afraid the forest, it was not safe." "I know," Elira said softly, "but we will face it together. You are not alone." The queen appeared at the edge of the garden, her presence commanding despite the distance. She did not speak, only observed, as if measuring every expression, every movement. Elira felt the queen's gaze like a constant weight. "Do not think these tasks are simple," Seraphine said finally. "There are consequences for failure. If you cannot prove your worth, both the princess and you will suffer more than mere wounds." Elira's heart tightened, but she nodded. She could feel the queen's power, her expectations, and perhaps something more, a desire to shape the outcome, to test Elira's very soul. The first challenge required Elira to enter the palace crypts. The air there was cold and damp, the stone walls lined with ancient armor, skeletal remains, and faded murals depicting long-forgotten kings. She carried only a lantern, her hands steady despite the chill and the faint whispers that seemed to follow her through the corridors. She approached a tomb marked with the sigil of the forest curse, a silver tree entwined with shadowed branches. Elira whispered a prayer and began her work, using her knowledge of herbs, magic, and intuition to uncover protective charms and to study the inscriptions that hinted at the curse's origin. Hours passed, and shadows grew long. Elira could feel a presence watching her, though no one was there. The air grew thick with tension, and faint lights flickered along the walls as if the spirits of the past were restless. She worked diligently, whispering words of healing, strength, and courage into the cold stones. When she finally emerged from the crypt, the sky had darkened, and the first stars were beginning to shine. She returned to the castle, exhausted but triumphant, and found Lyanna waiting in the garden, her face pale but determined. "You were gone long," the princess said softly. "I was afraid." "I am here," Elira replied, kneeling beside her once more, "and I will not leave you." That night, Elira sat again in Lyanna's chamber, the princess asleep but restless. The queen appeared at the door, her silhouette framed by moonlight. She did not speak at first, only watched, her presence both commanding and strange, almost intimate. "You learn quickly," Seraphine finally said, "but knowledge is only the beginning. Courage, yes, but understanding of hearts, of choices, of consequences is what will save her." Elira looked up, meeting the queen's dark eyes. I will do whatever it takes, Your Highness. I promise. The queen's lips curved slightly, a shadow of approval. Perhaps, but remember this, the world does not yield to promises alone. It tests us, and often in ways we do not expect. Shadows are patient, danger is patient, and love is the most dangerous test of all. Elira's chest tightened at the words. She had felt a bond forming with Lyanna, delicate and intense, but she had also felt the weight of the queen's expectations, the shadow of destiny pressing down upon her. The queen's words were both a warning and a challenge. As the night deepened, Elira reflected on what she had learned. The castle was more than stone and banners. It was alive with secrets, power, and hidden truths. Lyanna's wounds were not only physical, they were tied to magic older than the kingdom itself, and to choices that Elira would have to make. In the quiet hours, she realized something else. The queen's gaze was not just judgment. It was assessment, yes, but also curiosity. And perhaps admiration. The thought made Elira's heart beat faster, a mix of fear and something unnameable stirring in her chest. Morning came with the crowing of distant roosters and the first glimmers of light over the horizon. Elira rose, her body tired but her mind alert. Today's tasks would be harder. The queen had not finished testing her, and the whispers of the forest, of the curse, of the fate that tied them all together, grew louder. She entered the garden again, finding Lyanna already awake, sitting on the marble bench, watching the dawn. "You look tired," the princess said softly, though her eyes held a glimmer of mischief. "But determination suits you." Elira smiled faintly. "I will not fail, not for you, not for this kingdom, not for the queen." Lyanna reached for Elira's hand again, and the touch lingered longer than before. There was trust, yes, but also something deeper, a quiet, growing bond that neither of them fully understood yet. "Tomorrow," Lyanna whispered, "we must venture further. I can feel the curse still, lingering, waiting." Elira nodded, her heart tightening with both fear and resolve. She had faced shadows before, but this was different. This was a shadow tied to love, to duty, and to choices that could change everything. And as the queen watched silently from the doorway, Elira realized that her journey had only just begun. Every step would be a test, every choice a challenge, and every heartbeat a reminder that in this castle of shadows, nothing was as it seemed, and nothing would be given freely. Because the queen's game had begun, the forest waited like a silent sentinel at the edge of the castle grounds. Its trees were ancient, their twisted branches reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal hands. A thin mist curled along the roots and tangled vines, hiding shadows that moved of their own accord. Elira stood at the forest's edge, her cloak damp from the morning dew, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Princess Lyanna watched from behind, wrapped in a soft shawl, her violet eyes wide and alert. "Are you certain we should go?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The curse, it is strong here." Elira took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I must." The princess cannot fully heal without understanding this place, without confronting the source of her pain. She looked into Lyanna's face and saw both trust and courage shining through her fear. "And you will face it with me, together." Lyanna nodded, drawing a deep breath. Together they stepped into the forest. Immediately the air changed. It was cooler, heavier, filled with the scent of damp earth and something older, something that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. Elira could feel it prickling along her skin, a magic older than the castle, older than the kingdom itself. Every step forward brought the whisper of the trees, almost like voices speaking in a language just beyond understanding. "Do you hear that?" Lyanna whispered. "Yes," Elira said, her voice low. "The forest is alive, but we must not be afraid, we must keep moving." They followed a narrow path, twisted with roots and rocks, the mist curling around their feet. Every now and then, a shadow would shift in the corner of Elira's vision, but when she turned, nothing was there. She felt the pull of the forest, as if it were testing her resolve, probing her courage. After some time, they reached a small clearing. At its center stood a circle of ancient stones, covered in moss and etched with faded runes. The air was thick with magic, and Elira could feel the pulse of the curse in every vibration of the ground. "This is it," she whispered, kneeling beside one of the stones. She traced the runes with her fingers, feeling a faint warmth beneath her touch. "The curse begins here. The forest binds it, holds it in place, but it is connected to the princess and to someone else." Lyanna stepped closer, peering over Elira's shoulder. "Someone else." Elira hesitated. "A figure bound by the same magic. He is part of the curse, or he may be the key to breaking it." Before Lyanna could ask more, a rustle came from the shadows. Elira turned, her heart thundering in her chest, and saw a figure emerge. Tall, cloaked with a presence that seemed to blend with the darkness itself. His eyes glowed faintly beneath the hood, and a quiet strength radiated from him. "You shouldn't be here," the figure said, his voice calm but firm. "The forest does not forgive easily." Elira stood tall, holding Lyanna's hand. "We have no choice. The princess is bound by a curse and it must be broken. Will you help us, or stand in our way?" The figure hesitated, and for a moment Elira thought he might vanish into the shadows. Then he lowered his hood, revealing sharp features, dark hair, and eyes that were both sorrowful and fierce. "I am called Kaelin," he said. "I am tied to this curse, as are you, in ways you do not yet understand. To move forward, you must face truths that will shake the heart." Lyanna stepped closer to Elira, squeezing her hand. "We are ready," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Kaelin studied them, his expression unreadable. "Very well, but know this, the forest will test you. It will show you shadows of the past, illusions of the future, and temptations you may not recognize. Only those who are pure in heart can survive." Elira nodded, her resolve hardening. "We will survive." Kaelin led them deeper into the forest, the mist growing thicker, the trees seeming to close in around them. As they walked, Elira felt the magic intensify, and shadows moved more freely among the roots and branches. Whispers rose, unintelligible but haunting, echoing in her mind. Suddenly the path opened to another clearing, and Elira saw a vision, an illusion of the past. She gasped. The scene before her was of the castle, but older, darker. The queen was younger, her face full of sorrow, standing over a wounded man, her hands glowing with light that seemed to both heal and bind him. "This is the queen," Lyanna whispered. "What is she doing?" Elira's brow furrowed. I think it is a memory, a moment from long ago." "Something tied to the curse," Kaelin nodded. "The forest reveals truths as well as tests. You must understand the queen's past to understand why she demands so much. Her power, her will, and her fear. She has lived through loss, and she projects that fear onto others, guiding them, testing them." Elira absorbed the scene, realizing that the queen's demands, her insistence on marriage, were not just rules but lessons, harsh and difficult, designed to forge strength and courage. The illusion faded and the forest grew still. Kaelin's eyes met Elira's. "Now you understand a part of her," he said softly. "But understanding is only the beginning. You must confront the curse itself." He led them to a small pool, dark as ink, reflecting the twisted trees above. The water shimmered unnaturally, and Elira could see visions moving beneath the surface. Lyanna trapped, shadows closing in, whispers calling her name. "The curse dwells here," Kaelin said. "It tests the heart, preys on fear, and seeks to bind the soul. Only by facing it willingly can you hope to break it." Elira stepped forward, taking Lyanna's hand. "We face it together," she said. "No matter what we see, we will not falter." The shadows in the pool shifted, forming illusions of fear. Lyanna falling, Elira failing, the castle burning, the queen's disappointed gaze. Elira felt a cold tremor run through her, but she held her ground, anchoring herself with the bond she shared with Lyanna. "You are strong," Kaelin said quietly. "Stronger than most who enter this place, but strength alone will not save you. You must trust your heart." Elira closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She focused on Lyanna, on her trust, her courage, and the quiet bond that had grown between them. Slowly, the shadows began to recede, dissolving into the mist. The pool became still, reflecting only the trees and the gray sky above. Lyanna looked at Elira, eyes wide. You saved me," she whispered. "No," Elira said softly. "We saved each other. The forest can only do so much. We choose the rest." Kaelin stepped back, studying them. "You have passed the first trial," he said. "But know this, the curse is patient. It will not be defeated easily, and it will demand more than courage alone. Secrets yet hidden and choices yet unmade will shape the outcome." They rested briefly, the forest now quiet, but Elira could feel the tension lingering. Shadows still moved at the edges of her vision, subtle and watchful. Every step forward would bring new challenges, new tests of heart and skill. Lyanna leaned against Elira, a silent gesture of trust and dependence. "I do not know what the forest wants," she said softly. "But I know I want to be with you through it." Elira's chest tightened, and she brushed a strand of hair from Lyanna's face. "And you will be, no matter what comes, we face it together." Kaelin watched silently, a shadowed figure in the mist. The bond between you is rare, he said quietly, almost to himself. It is the kind of bond that can change fate itself. Guard it well, for the curse will seek to destroy it. Night fell in the forest, and the mist grew thicker, curling around the trees like living fingers. Elira and Lyanna made camp beneath an ancient oak, the roots forming a natural shelter. Elira tended to small cuts and scrapes, her hands gentle, precise, yet lingering in a way that spoke of more than duty. Lyanna watched her, the firelight reflecting in her violet eyes. "I feel safer with you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elira's heart swelled, but she forced herself to stay calm. "And I will not let anything harm you," she promised. "No shadow, no curse, no force in this world." The night deepened, and the forest seemed to hum around them. Elira could feel magic in every breath of wind, in every rustle of the leaves. Shadows shifted, whispering secrets, testing their resolve. Suddenly, a chill ran through the air, and Elira felt a presence approach. From the darkness, Kalen emerged again, his expression solemn. "The next trial is not far," he said. "It will test more than skill. It will test your heart, your courage, and the strength of the bond you share. Prepare yourselves, for what comes may change you forever." Elira looked at Lyanna, whose hand she held tightly. "We will face it together," she said firmly. The princess nodded, and for a moment the forest seemed almost calm, as if acknowledging their determination. But deep within the shadows, unseen eyes watched, waiting, and the whisper of the curse stirred, growing stronger, hungrier, and more determined than ever. And Elira knew with a certainty that filled her with both fear and resolve that their journey had only just begun. The forest was patient, and so were its shadows. The forest was heavier than before, as though it sensed the approach of something greater. The mist had thickened, curling around the trees like silver snakes, and the wind whispered with a voice both soft and warning. Elira moved forward carefully, Lyanna close at her side, their hands intertwined. Every step was measured, every sound amplified in the hush of the ancient woods. Kalen led them to a clearing where the ground was ringed with stones carved with glowing runes. In the center, a small pool reflected the dim light of the overcast sky. The water shimmered unnaturally, and Elira could feel the pulse of magic radiating from it. "This is the heart of the curse," Kalen said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Here you will confront not only the shadows of the forest, but the shadows within yourselves. Your courage, your loyalty, and your hearts will all be tested." Elira nodded, her grip on Lyanna's hand tightening. She could feel the princess trembling slightly, though her violet eyes were fierce and determined. "We are ready," Elira said. "Whatever it takes, we face it together." Kalen studied them, his expression unreadable. "Very well, but beware. The forest will show you visions that feel real. It will tempt you, frighten you, and try to separate you from each other. Only those who remain steadfast can overcome it." Elira swallowed hard and stepped toward the pool. The water's surface began to ripple, forming shapes that twisted and shifted. She saw visions of the castle burning, the queen's disappointed gaze, and Lyanna trapped beneath shadowy chains. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to breathe, focusing on Lyanna's hand in hers. "It is an illusion," Elira said softly, though her voice trembled slightly. "It cannot touch us. We choose our path." Lyanna's grip strengthened. "I trust you," she whispered. "No matter what happens, I am with you." The pool shimmered, then changed. The visions became more personal, more intimate. Elira saw herself failing to save Lyanna, being struck down by shadows, and the princess's eyes filled with fear and betrayal. Pain stabbed at her heart, but she held firm, clinging to the trust and bond they had built. "You are strong," Kalen said from the shadows, his tone both approving and cautionary. "Stronger than most who come here, but the heart can falter and love can be used against you. Do not let fear control you." The visions intensified. The water now showed the queen, standing above Elira, her eyes filled with command and a strange mixture of curiosity and something unspoken. "You must marry," the reflection whispered, echoing the words Elira had first heard. The voice reverberated through the clearing, chilling her to the bone. Elira forced herself to look away from the reflection and focus on Lyanna. The princess's eyes shone with courage, and in that moment Elira realized the truth. The bond between them was more powerful than any shadow, any curse, any command. Together they could face what was coming. Suddenly the ground trembled. From the mist emerged twisted shadows, shapes that seemed to slither and twist, reaching for them with dark, smoky tendrils. The forest itself seemed to come alive, testing their courage, seeking to drive them apart. Stay close, Elira whispered, moving in front of Lyanna. We are together, we cannot be separated. The shadows lunged, but as Elira's resolve strengthened, they recoiled, dissolving into mist. Lyanna stepped forward, her own courage radiating, and the pool's surface began to calm. The illusions faded, leaving only the three of them standing in the quiet, misty clearing. Kalen stepped forward, his eyes serious. You have passed the first part of the trial, he said. But the curse has more than fear to test you. It has secrets, choices, and sacrifices. Prepare yourselves, for the next challenge will demand everything you hold dear. Elira's heart thudded in her chest. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The knowledge that every decision she made could change not only Lyanna's fate, but the fate of the kingdom. They pressed deeper into the forest, the mist growing thicker, the trees towering above like silent sentinels. Strange whispers followed them, voices of the past and future intertwined. Elira kept her hand on Lyanna's, grounding them both as Kalen led the way. After some time, they reached a small glade where the sky above seemed to darken unnaturally. The sun was swallowed by clouds, and a strange, crimson light bathed the clearing. Elira felt a chill run down her spine. This is the next stage, Kalen said. The eclipse is beginning. It will reveal the truth of your hearts and test the strength of your bond. You must be honest with yourselves, with each other, and with the world. Only then can the curse be broken. The air grew heavy, and Elira felt a strange pull at her chest. Images appeared in the shadows, visions of loss, betrayal, and heartbreak. She saw herself failing Lyanna, the princess alone and in pain, and the queen's eyes filled with disappointment. Fear gripped her, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. No, she whispered. I will not fail. We are together, and together we are stronger than fear. Lyanna stepped closer, her hand resting on Elira's arm. I will not leave you, she said softly. No matter what comes, we face it together. The eclipse reached its peak, and the crimson light intensified. Shadows from the forest swirled around them, forming shapes that reflected their deepest fears. Kalen stood beside them, silent but vigilant, his presence a reminder that they were not alone. Then the visions shifted. Elira saw the cursed Prince Kalen in chains, struggling against a dark force. His eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. She realized that the curse bound him as well, that his fate was tied to theirs in ways they could not yet understand. You see now, Kalen said softly, his voice carrying over the whispering wind. The curse is not only the forest's. It is the past, the choices of those who came before, and the bonds you hold. To break it, you must act with both courage and heart. Elira nodded, her determination hardening. She reached for Lyanna's hand, drawing strength from their connection. Together they stepped forward, facing the shadows, the visions, and the truth laid bare before them. The forest responded, the mist swirling around their feet, the shadows recoiling as Elira and Lyanna's resolve strengthened. The crimson light of the eclipse bathed them in its glow, illuminating the courage in their hearts and the bond that had grown between them. You have done well, Kalen said, but the final test awaits. It will demand more than skill, more than courage. It will demand sacrifice, trust, and the willingness to face what you fear most. Are you ready? Elira looked at Lyanna, seeing the determination and trust shining in her eyes. We are ready, she said firmly. The eclipse reached its zenith, and a sudden silence fell over the forest. Even the whispers seemed to vanish, leaving only the three of them standing in the crimson light. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, and commanding. The Queen. Elira, Seraphine's voice rang out, both stern and commanding, yet carrying a note of something softer, almost reverent. You have faced the forest, the curse, and illusions of fear. You have proven your skill and courage. But now, the true choice is before you. Elira felt her heart tighten. She knew the Queen's test was far from over. The words she had spoken before echoed in her mind. You must marry. Only then can you protect what you love. But now, in the forest under the crimson eclipse, those words carried a weight Elira could barely comprehend. You must choose, the Queen continued. Not only for the princess, but for the fate of the forest, the curse, and all bound by it. Your heart will guide you, but it will also be tested. Choose wisely. Lyanna stepped forward, her hand still in Elira's. I trust you, she whispered. Whatever choice you make, I am with you. Elira's chest tightened at the words. She realized that this was more than a test of skill or courage. It was a test of heart, loyalty, and the depth of the bond they shared. Every decision, every thought, every feeling mattered. Kalen watched silently, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and concern. "The moment has come," he said softly. "Face the truth, and the curse may finally release its hold." Elira took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She felt the forest around her, the pull of the curse, the presence of the queen, and the steady hand of Lyanna in hers. In that moment, she understood the truth. Strength alone would not break the curse. Courage alone would not save them. Only the bond they shared, the love and trust between them, could overcome the darkness. She opened her eyes, meeting Lyanna's gaze. "We face it together," she said firmly. "No matter what comes, we are together." The queen nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Very well. Then face the heart's reckoning, and may the truth guide you." The shadows around them shifted one final time, then dissolved into mist. The crimson light of the eclipse began to fade, leaving the forest bathed in soft silver. Elira and Lyanna stood together, hand in hand, stronger and more determined than ever. Kalen stepped forward, a faint smile on his lips. "You have passed the trials of courage and heart, but the forest still watches, still waits. The final path lies ahead, and the choices you make will shape not only your lives but the fate of all bound by this curse." Elira nodded, her resolve unwavering. She looked at Lyanna, who returned her gaze with equal determination. Together they would face whatever came next, no matter the shadows, no matter the tests, no matter the power of the Queen's command. And as they stood in the forest, the eclipse fading behind them, Elira knew that the heart's reckoning was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The shadows had been faced, but the path forward remained uncertain, dangerous, and full of secrets yet to be revealed. The dawn broke slowly over the forest, pale light filtering through the dense canopy. The crimson glow of the eclipse had vanished, leaving the world washed in soft silver and gold. Elira stood at the edge of the clearing, her hand tightly clasped around Lyanna's. Both were exhausted, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, but their eyes burned with determination. The trials of the forest were behind them, yet Elira knew the greatest challenge still awaited, the final confrontation with the curse and the choices it demanded. Kalen stood beside them, silent but alert. His dark eyes scanned the forest, noting every movement, every shifting shadow. Though the forest had tested them, it had also revealed truths. The cursed prince, bound by magic older than kingdoms, had begun to see the possibility of freedom in Elira's courage and the bond she shared with Lyanna. "The forest has done what it can," Kalen said softly, "but the curse remains anchored in the hearts of those tied to it. Only through action, sacrifice, and truth can it finally be broken." Elira nodded, her resolve firm. "Then we act, together." They stepped into the heart of the clearing where the black waters of the pool waited, still and silent. Elira could see faint ripples across its surface, reflections of their own fears, hopes, and memories intertwining. She took a deep breath and glanced at Lyanna, who gave her a small, encouraging smile. "Whatever happens," Lyanna said, "we face it side by side." Elira squeezed her hand. "Always." The pool shimmered, and the shadows within began to rise, forming shapes that reflected the curse itself. Dark, twisting forms coiled like serpents, eyes glowing with malice, reaching for them with invisible hands. But Elira did not falter. She focused on the bond she shared with Lyanna, on the trust that had carried them through the forest, and the courage that had been tested in every shadow and illusion. Kalen stepped forward, raising a hand. "Do not fight with force alone. The curse feeds on fear, doubt, and disconnection. Stand together and it cannot hold you." Elira inhaled deeply and stepped toward the pool. Lyanna followed, placing her hand over Elira's heart. The connection between them pulsed, almost like a living force. They felt it, something stronger than fear, stronger than shadows, stronger than any magic the forest could wield. The curse surged, forming a massive shadow that towered over them. Its voice was a whisper in Elira's mind, 1,000 voices speaking of doubt, fear, and failure. "You cannot break me," it hissed. "You are weak, divided mortal." Elira closed her eyes and felt Lyanna's hand squeeze hers. "We are not weak," she whispered aloud. "We are bound together, and that bond is stronger than you." The shadow recoiled slightly, uncertain. Elira opened her eyes and looked at Lyanna. "Trust me," she said, "and trust yourself. Whatever comes, we face it as one." Lyanna nodded. "I trust you always." With that, Elira and Lyanna stepped fully into the pool's edge. Their courage, love, and trust acted like a beacon, and the shadow screamed in fury. Tendrils of darkness lashed at them, but the bond between the two glowed brightly. a light that pushed back the shadows, illuminating the clearing in a pure, warm glow. Kalen raised his hands, chanting softly, the ancient language of the forest weaving through the air. The cursed magic began to unravel, the tendrils of darkness dissolving into mist. Elira and Lyanna's combined courage and connection anchored the magic, holding it steady, guiding it toward release. Suddenly, a final vision appeared in the water, a shadow of the queen, her hands raised as if to command. Her eyes were not angry now, but filled with sorrow and longing. Elira realized that the queen herself had been bound by the consequences of the curse, her demands and tests stemming from a past pain that had yet to be healed. "Mother," Lyanna whispered, her voice trembling. "I understand now. I understand why you demanded so much. It was fear and love all bound together." The vision of the queen smiled faintly, a tear glinting in the corner of her eye. Then it vanished, leaving only Elira and Lyanna standing together, the curse finally breaking. The pool stilled, the shadows dissolved, and the forest breathed a quiet sigh as if relieved. Kalen stepped forward, a faint smile breaking his usual solemn expression. "It is done," he said softly. "The curse is broken. The bond you share has freed not only yourselves, but those tied to the forest's magic." Elira felt her knees weaken, and Lyanna held her steady. "We did it," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Lyanna nodded, tears glistening in her violet eyes. "Together," she said firmly. "Always." From the edge of the clearing, the queen emerged. Seraphine's expression was softened, a mixture of relief, pride, and something deeper that Elira had never seen before. She stepped forward, her presence commanding yet gentle. "You have done what few could," the queen said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of authority. "You faced fear, shadows, and the unknown, and yet you held your hearts true. You have earned more than gratitude. You have earned trust, respect, and perhaps understanding." Elira bowed slightly, her chest still racing. "Thank you, Your Highness, for your guidance and for your faith, however it was tested." The queen's eyes softened as she looked at Lyanna. "And you, my daughter, you have grown stronger than I could have imagined. Courage, wisdom, and a heart capable of love beyond fear. I am proud of you." Lyanna stepped forward, taking Elira's hand. "And I am proud of her," the queen said, her gaze lingering on Elira. There was a moment, brief and almost imperceptible, where the queen's sternness faltered, replaced by something that hinted at acknowledgement, even admiration. Kalen bowed his head, his dark eyes reflecting gratitude. "You both have given me hope," he said softly. "The curse that has bound me for so long is lifted. Freedom at last." Elira felt a warmth fill her chest, not only from the release of the curse, but from the profound realization that they had all grown and changed. Courage, love, and trust had proven stronger than any magic. The forest around them shifted, leaves shimmering as if celebrating the newfound peace. Birds began to sing, and the mist lifted, revealing sunlight glinting through the branches. The forest had transformed from a place of trials into a sanctuary of renewal. Elira looked at Lyanna, their hands still clasped, hearts still beating in quiet synchronicity. "We faced the shadows," she said softly, "and we are still together." Lyanna smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Elira's face. "Always," she whispered, echoing the words that had carried them through every trial. The queen stepped closer, placing a hand on Lyanna's shoulder. "You have learned much," she said. "And you, Elira, you have proven that love, courage, and devotion are as powerful as any command or spell. You have earned your place here not by birth but by heart." Elira bowed deeply, overcome by both relief and gratitude. "I am honored, Your Highness." The queen nodded, her gaze lingering a moment longer on Elira before turning to Lyanna. "The kingdom is changing. The old fears, the old shadows will fade if the lessons you have learned are carried forward. Protect one another, and you will thrive where others have faltered." Kalen stepped beside Elira, offering a small smile. "I will serve as guardian of the forest," he said. "But now I am free, and I owe that freedom to the bond I witnessed here between two hearts stronger than any curse." Elira glanced at him, then back at Lyanna. "We could not have done it without you," she said. "You guided us, gave strength when we faltered." The princess laughed softly, the sound like wind through leaves. "We all guided each other," Lyanna said, "and together we are unstoppable." The queen studied them both, her gaze warm yet commanding. "Perhaps love is the truest magic of all," she whispered, almost to herself. The sunlight grew stronger, bathing the clearing in golden warmth. Shadows that had lingered for centuries were gone. The forest hummed with life, vibrant and alive. The curse that had once held them captive was no more. Elira and Lyanna stood together, hands entwined, hearts beating in unison. Kaelin watched from the edge of the clearing, free at last but tied to them by respect and shared trials. And the queen, for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, smiled without restraint, knowing that her daughter and the healer who had proven herself had changed the fate of the kingdom forever. Elira looked at Lyanna, violet eyes meeting hers, and whispered, "We made it." Lyanna smiled, a radiant warmth in her gaze. "Yes," she said, "and this is only the beginning." The forest, the castle, and the world beyond seemed to breathe with new life. Shadows had been faced, hearts had been tested, and love had emerged stronger than any curse. And in that golden dawn, Elira knew one thing with certainty. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together, bound not by fear, command, or magic, but by trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond of the heart. The forest had been conquered, the curse lifted, and a new chapter had begun. Together they stepped forward, into the light, into freedom, and into a future that they would shape with their own hearts.